created by participants in the 2018 Summer Initiative Social Justice Through the Arts, hosted by the CSU Alliance Partnership. The Gregory Alcorn Museum of Art could not be more proud to be a part of this collaborative effort that also includes the College of Liberal Arts, Women's Studies and Gender Research, the University Center for the Arts, the Department of Music, Theater and Dance, and the Department of Art and Art History. The mural project that has so wonderfully enlivened our sculpture garden these last few months was led by Rose Jaffe, our speaker tonight. Jaffe is a visual artist whose mediums span mural painting, printmaking, and digital illustration. She was born and raised in Washington, D.C., went on to earn her BFA at the School of Art and Design at the University of Michigan before returning to D.C. She taught art in high school and in after-school programs before going on to pursue a full-time career as an artist. And since then, she has created more than 20 large-scale murals across the country and around the world, most recently in Karachi, Pakistan. Her work most often centers around the human form, exploring themes of political activism, female empowerment, natural healing, and spiritual grounding. She is dedicated to using art as the powerful tool it can be, finding connection, and creating an outlet for expression and community building. We're delighted to have her back with us this evening for her talk. Before we bring her up, I was going to turn things over to Lisa, but Lisa, have you done your part? I was a little late, and I apologize.
No, that's okay. Sure. Say a few words, and I really just thank you. If you could step that way. Oh, yeah. Oh, right.
Oh, sorry.
Straight up the pillar. Well, I am just so honored and happy and excited to have her here and share Rose with all of you. She was here this summer for the creation of the mural, which some of you just got to go see, and maybe when we're done, we can go back and see it. And it's also up through the rest of the month before we de-install it and hopefully take it to some of the schools where the students that created the piece will be able to present it. And really some of the best people she presented are the ones who created those kids that came. So I am somewhat related to this person. She's my niece. But when today I watched her present in Dr. Hill's class, which she held. The class is the psychology of diversity from oppression to empowerment. And I'm just always so amazed at the depth of the work and the power of the work and the people, so connected to the people. And these students were just riveted and so taken in by the message and the accessibility and just the get on the ground and do it. And it's really wonderful to see that response, right? Just incredible. So I'm excited for her to share with you that same body of work and just what she's done in terms of making a voice for artists in the city, in Washington, D.C. But another reason to bring her out here and encourage that voice for all of us, especially for you, to have that confidence and that ability to just go forward and be creative and step into that space and share the work and make a difference and make a change.
Okay, let's do this. So I was going to quickly, hi everyone, my name's Rose. I'm really happy to be here. I wanted to quickly start by telling this experience that I had this morning. I went to Lisa's kind of this small workshop that she's doing. She's doing work on with Parkinson's patients, and I'd been hearing a lot about it and kind of reading about it, but never really went and saw what she was doing. So I went today for only about 15 minutes, and there was a woman that she's been working with, and then a woman that was the Parkinson's patient, so a dancer and then a Parkinson's patient. And they're choreographing this short dance piece. It's only like a minute long. And somebody else came into the room and we watched this dance piece and we were just left speechless and in tears, really. And I think that really speaks to the power of what art can do. And I think that's really kind of at the heart of what I do and what I'm really passionate about. Is like that feeling that you get from something like a dance piece or an art piece, or a poem or a spoken word or anything like that. I think art is incredibly powerful to move and shift people. And so I feel like that was the perfect way to start my day today, just to kind of reinforce how amazing art really is. I will say this projector, the light unfortunately is off, so a lot of the colors are off. I just want to preface that, it's important that you know that. So I've been drawing for forever, basically. And I've always been really drawn to people's faces. A lot of my work in college was about portraiture and what is your storyline, really looking at expression and kind of diving into portraiture. So I have hundreds of drawings of people's faces. These are some modern prints and other drawings that I did. I love also exploring different mediums, so from printmaking and digital illustration to carving and all these, I really love kind of the hands-on aspect of exploring art and its capacities. So these are some digital illustrations that I've been recently playing with, and I'm just an entrepreneur fan. This is a body of work that I did for my first solo exhibition in 2015. And again, the colors are pretty off, but these are very large-scale wood-burn portraits that I did of friends of mine. And I'll talk a little bit more later, but like who I'm inspired by is really the community that's around me, and I really love taking reference pictures of the folks in my orbit. These are pieces that I did from a residency in Berlin. This piece on the right is about Sandy Hook, and it's kind of a Guernica-inspired piece that when you first look at it, it looks maybe fun, and there's these bright colors going on, and then when you really look at what's going on, it's kind of a scene of terror. And again, you know, art for me, that's sort of my language, and that's my way to process emotion, and that's why it's been such an amazing thing for me that I really try to bring that to other people as a way of processing trauma or just processing life in general, really a form of expression. These are recently I've been exploring carving and again, really drawn to the face and just using more mediums to continue to kind of explore and push my own artistic skills. Prints. This is a woman that I carved in Guatemala. Carving is this awesome thing. I've carved in the Himalayas of India and Guatemala, and kind of took it on the road with me. So as I have been working, I've constantly tied in my work of social justice, and I've always been, I don't know, advocate or activist, there's a lot of labels that can really be used, but I've always been engaged with social and political issues. Since high school, I was doing, protesting regularly for the Iraq War, I was doing political cartoons, I went to college and did political cartoons, and I was really fired up by the time I got back to DC. So these are sort of more recent things. This one on the left is a piece that I did with my friend, sort of about body image and how if we radically love ourselves, and that can be a really powerful thing, especially for women. And this is about abortion, specifically my abortion story, and kind of breaking down the stigma of that, and really what we can do when we share things like that, and to kind of collectively say that this is something that's okay. And when I posted this, I mean, the amount of responses that I got from other women, it was really, really powerful. Again, these are, things that I made, prints that I made kind of a while ago. You can sort of tell this is one of the first prints that I made, and I've gotten better. But that's also the thing with art. It's a daily regimen for me. I practice and practice and practice, and I love to get better at it over time. I made this after the shooting in Florida on Valentine's Day. And I was just, I become overwhelmed with feelings, and I don't know what to do with it. So often, obviously, I turn towards art, and now I have a social media platform that is a really great place for me to share things like this. And then, social media is this amazing thing that tons of people can share this image, and this went viral, and lots of people shared it. And it's something that's so simple, but I felt the need to say it, and it's something that other people, if they can't feel like they express it through that way, then they can pass something like this along. This was for an organization that I did a series of black and white things, and they used them to color in. These are other posters. I have so many things like this. This one on the right is, again, a kind of cartoon type thing that I did about Mitch Snyder and the Flint water crisis when I was living in Michigan. And, you know, really commenting that he was one of the main reasons in not doing what he should for the people of Flint. And then this one, I worked with this organization in Baltimore, and they did a lot of work about formerly incarcerated individuals, and Maryland passed something where incarcerated individuals could vote, except there was very little awareness about that. So there was super low turnout. So there was a big campaign to spread awareness about that. And art is a beautiful way to do that. Often we had a conversation about how we're doing that, and you know, oftentimes large bodies of text and things like that, pamphlets, people, maybe they're illiterate, or maybe they feel like that's not an accessible thing, but art is something that can immediately draw people in and make it more of an accessible space. These are other things that I've done. I just did these things on my own. The Animals Climate March, I just felt the need to speak up for the animals because I feel like they don't have a voice, and it's something we really need to kind of be aware of. This I made years ago, like maybe in 2014, but it's more relevant today than ever, I think. So I was one of the art organizers for the People's Climate March, which was this spring in Washington, and it started in 2014 in New York. And I had never kind of organized art on that scale before, and I worked with a few other people that were much more versed than I was, and I learned a ton from them about how to organize art and kind of execute it on a larger scale. So we made 6 of these 25-foot long banners that separated the march, which had 150,000 people, into sections. And then we made these giant parachutes. And as I was talking about earlier today, we had this warehouse space, and for 2 weeks we all worked in this warehouse space with myself, the other art organizers, and then people across the country that had come from their own art collectives. And the People's Climate March did this amazing thing where they provided funding for people that could apply for it. They provided funding, and then they would get sent a parachute or something else, or just money, so that they could do their own art builds and then provide funding for them to bring that to DC. So the whole thing was really to provide the infrastructure for artists to make the art that was connected to their communities, bring it to DC, and really feel like they were represented. So they were really into focusing and centering frontline communities, and I learned a ton through this process, and it was rad. This is a big banner that I painted that went behind the stage, and then on the left you can kind of see the scale. That's like just a half of one of the huge parachutes. So they were really, really amazing. And on here you can say housing justice is climate justice. And so a lot of the conversation was that climate justice, so many things are tied into climate justice. Advocating for women and girls, advocating for housing. All of these things are really tied into what it's going to look like when the climate fails us, and who's being affected by that, and who's already being affected by that, which is tons of people. Feel free to ask questions, by the way, but I would love to have a conversation after this about a lot of these things. So the Women's March in DC I actually wasn't there because I was painting in Karachi, but of course I had to do something for it. So I organized an art build and painted a series of banners, and then organized where they all went, and then I left. But I also applied, there was a nationwide call for art, an amplifier, which is a really amazing nationwide art organizing entity. So that was my submission. And then I created these series of banners. And I think that, again, it's creating art simple, legible, and accessible. I made tons of buttons and they were so popular and I just kept making more and more of them. And it was just kind of another fun way to put art out there. And people love them. People still to this day like put them on their bags and on their jackets and text me about it. And you know, it's a little kind of sign that says where you're coming from, and it's also fun and colorful and relevant. So when I moved back to DC, I found this art space and then this subsequent collective, and it was kind of 2B Studios was the space, and I'll talk a little bit later about the importance of mentorship, but I learned a ton from these artists, and I think it's really, really critical that we have mentors and people that we can learn from, and they really helped guide me, not only as a white person making art in communities of color, but really what you're saying and how you're saying it and how you're being intentional about that. So this was a show that we had called Incarcerated Masses that I didn't curate, but I made this piece after doing a bunch of research about mothers that were incarcerated and the effects that it has on families, which is really tremendous. And again, kind of a bright, beautiful, colorful piece, but then there was actually a text box there that you could really read some of the statistics about it. This was a job I did for Amnesty International with Damon Davis, who's there. And Damon kind of rose to notoriety after Michael Brown was murdered. And he did these series of wheat pastes of hands. And that sort of went viral. And then he's been doing a lot of amazing video work and films lately. But we collaborated on this where I created these 2-scale figure cutouts of I think 10 or 11 victims of police brutality, and then he wrote their stories on them. And we set them up in front of the Union Station, and we had X's on them that connected to the place where they were killed. And then there's lots of other X's. So the idea was really to be able to walk straight up to this figure and have it be a life-size figure, and really think about that this was a person. This person had a family, they had kids, parents, and really the chance to kind of look them in the eye and think about that, and think that they're also a drop in the bucket of this epidemic of police brutality. This was a really fun street art project that I did with my friend called Feminist Buck of Facts. And this was just a fun thing that we did. And it was kind of when fake news was being very trendy a while ago. And the idea was just to kind of have solid facts that were then backed up by actual statistics and then action points of what you could do about them. So they were about transphobia, about the gender gap in pay, a variety of things. And we put them all over electrical boxes and things like that all over the city. And again, it's utilizing public space. So often you have ads, there's a lot of things that take up your public space that you're not asking to look at all day. But things like a mural or a piece of street art, that's such an amazing opportunity to create something that you're putting in front of people's eyes that means something and that they can read, maybe they can Instagram or whatever, and is disseminated as, I think, very critical information. And then there's action points, and we're really focused on the action points instead of just putting out facts that suck. Really kind of tying them to relevant things that you can do about it. Call your congressman, make sure that you're doing these things about this particular issue. So for the past year, ending in September, from September to September, I had this amazing space called The Stew, and it was a former H&R Block. And it was in the shopping center, and predominantly community of color, but they were tearing down to create tons of condos. There's tons of displacement, and gentrification is really rampant in DC right now. So I got the opportunity to be in this space, and I was like, all right, cool, what am I gonna do in this space? I've never had such a big space before. My studios have always been big, small. So I had this opportunity to have the space. I thought about, I'm gonna break it up do that. So I decided to have my studio in the back, and then the whole front space be a space where people can connect and have it be a very affordable rental space, which is, I would say, impossible to find in Washington, and a space that's dedicated to arts and social justice. So it was a tremendous learning experience and also just tons of fun. And I created 5 art shows there. I had them, they were called artist showcases. And they were all artists that had either never shown before or were emerging in some way. And that I felt weren't just any artists, but really, really high quality artists. So on the far left is this amazing artist, David Yabata, and he had a grid of 12 of those amazing portraits. And this is a huge painting, and these are some of the other artists that I had. So we showed over 26 artists in those shows. And then I also I created posters for all of them, which was just a fun thing that I did, but we had, I really wanted to use it also as kind of a healing space. I think that everybody right now is sort of going through kind of a nationwide maybe trauma, and I think that there's a lot of people, a lot of communities, more than other communities, that feel the weight of that in real time. And I think that creating spaces for self-care is really critical in that space. So we hosted yoga classes and kind of meditation courses and things like that for people to come and learn techniques that they could then use. We had this awesome self-defense class. It was like packed. It was very cool. And again, I think that it's all about space, providing a space to do this. And then what happens when you're in a huge room of women, you don't know people, and you're like, oh, you meet the person next to you, or maybe you build with them. And in this era of just focus on social media and so much internet, I think sometimes we lack that person-to-person contact. And so creating a space like this, I mean, this was a wonderful night because we were all like next to each other, pairing up with, the next person, pretending to punch them. And then we were also just building in a space of women, or women identifying. I used it as art build for a variety of protests that were in DC. So there was, the huge anti-gun protest, which I couldn't believe we were having in 2018. But again, this is a place where people can come together. We had a conversation at that. We had someone from Moms Demand Action, which is a very cool anti-gun campaign. And we just went around this kind of the circle before everyone started and talked about why you were there. And there was a girl there that I didn't know her, and she went to Sandy Hook. She was I think in 11th grade or something, and she, it was amazing to sort of hear from her about that experience. And so, again, I think it just goes back to creating a space for something like this to happen, and then being intentional about what you're doing in that space. These are just some of the other events that we had there. Purim is a cool Jewish holiday, and there was this insane party that this group of Jews from DC that are radical organized there, and it was kind of retelling the Purim story. And out of that, they started a more radical synagogue community out of this party at the stew. So it was really awesome, and now there's this kind of burgeoning radical community that's, a lot more open to different colors of people and different backgrounds, and really kind of retelling and reshaping the narrative of a progressive Jewish person. And then I have this amazing woman, Pamela Castro. She's a feminist artist from Brazil, and she was coming for this amazing documentary that I was a part of about female artists. And she kept trying all over DC to find a place to show her art. At the end of the day, I was like, Pamela, just show it at the stew. And it was like a beautiful gallery, kind of beautiful gallery space. and so she did, and it was a really amazing experience. So I have this video that I commissioned, such a beautiful slide. And this video, I was very inspired after I came to Fort Collins. And I found out that I only had 30 more days to do. And I was pretty busy at the time, but I was really like, listen, I know that I need to end the stew on we need to do something to honor this space. And I knew that they were tearing it down. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna invite people that did something at the stew, and close friends of mine, and we sort of honored the stew by ceremonially destroying it. So we painted on the walls, on the floor, and on ourselves, and documented that. And then we sat and had a conversation about art and art spaces and why they're so important to us. At the same time, there was 2 other critical art spaces that were closing. It was just sort of a coincidence. And the city paper did a whole article about the stew and about these other spaces, and the desperate need for art space in DC and the serious lack of art space. So this was a kind of conversation about that. Yeah.
Spaces like these, when I first moved here, when I walked art spaces that are literally just walls and opportunity, not fancy or organization or balance. Because really, do we live balanced lives? Like, as artists, I don't even use that word anymore. Like, there is no balance because there's always something churning within us to create or change or evolve or transform.
Creating these, like, whether it's like
already sort of connect and vibe with each other, you know, it's a pretty revolution. So that was the stew. Such an amazing place. Really quickly about the stew. So after one of my best friends is Rosalind, who was the dancer, and she is just totally killing it working at the school, and she just been promoted, and she had been working. It was back to school night. She kind of showed up pretty late to this thing, and I really wanted her to do this piece, and so she kind of like put her stuff down and put on those cool pants, and then just started doing her thing. And we were all watching, just like, oh my God. And afterwards, she just totally broke down crying, and she was like, I just didn't even know that was in me right now. Like I needed that so much. And it was so powerful to see that, and then just kind of see her process what that meant to her to do that. And I think that was such a perfect reflection of what the stew was sort of all about. And I got that feedback a lot throughout having that space in every event. We had an event that was kind of educating about sex workers and these different groups in DC that were advocating for this bill that was being passed. And people were like, we need safe spaces like this, you know, where we can feel like, you know, we don't have to worry about the police coming, or we don't have to worry about certain things, or it's affordable and accessible. And that's a smaller and smaller thing, especially in Washington. So I also had that one woman, Pa, is Venezuelan, and she's a refugee. She's only been here for a few years. And she was protesting in Venezuela, and the police, like her family was, she was in trouble basically, and she was fearing for her family, so she moved to the States, and we organized this event where it was all sort of about telling the story of what's going on in Venezuela right now. It was just packed, the stew was packed, and there was this Venezuelan band, and it was this amazing community. And, you know, again, I think it can't be overstated that when you provide a free space, that allows for so much more to happen for people. When you kind of take that, you know, capitalist piece out of it, and everything doesn't have to be about making money. It allows for creativity, and it allows for people to just do more things and be more free. Any questions so far? Okay, cool. So this piece that we saw outside before we started was obviously really amazing and inspiring. And I feel like I could talk for a while about it, but basically it was a 1 week long program that we did. And the painting happened over 2 days. And it was really inspired by the days before, which was a lot of conversation about identity, about social justice, how young people fit into that social justice piece, how they could play their own part, and how they could find the words and the tools to kind of process what they were going through. It was some really deep things that happened in this 1 week, and I think a lot of it was because they were together for 24 hours at a time. I feel like more happened in that week than with my high school students all year, partly because they were constantly together, and they could take the time to process what happened during the day. And I think that giving that time is really critical, and we don't do that enough. I also think that having mentors there was a bridge between me and Dr. Souza and Lisa and the students. And again, I can't stress how important it is to have mentors for youth. And I think that in school, there's the teacher, and there's maybe a professor, but having somebody outside of that, or after college, somebody that people can feel safe to go to is really important, and exists in other structures and other communities, but not necessarily a part of our society. So I think it was a very successful week. And the students were amazing and really stepped up to the plate. We're inspired, like I mentioned a little bit before, we're inspired by this movement class that Lisa led, that we took photographs from, and they created these compositions, and we decided on one, and then we executed and painted in 2 days all together. And that takes collaboration, it takes respect, it takes a lot of communication, and students never fail to amaze me when you give them a task and put responsibility on them. They really rise to the occasion, and they were incredible. It was so amazing, and I was so honored to be just a facilitator of making all of that happen. And I knew that we could do it, and we did it. It was great. These are other kind of murals that I did that were inspired by people and communities that I met. This was in Karachi, and I painted this mural of this father and son that were part of 27 generations of Qawwali music singers, which were totally amazing, and their music was amazing. I'm a big Sufi music fan now. And then we did these series of workshops in a few different schools throughout Karachi. And again, it was amazing to connect with these communities and also just to see what they did when, given a prompt and let them do their thing. It was really a beautiful thing, and it was really wonderful to be there in their space and listen to what they wanted to do. This was a project I did, it was commissioned by the city to do a mural on this wall. It happened to be on the side of this big homeless shelter. So I was like, oh, I can paint a beach scene, or I can paint something about the people that exist in this space, and they're gonna have to look at this every single day. So I hung out there for a few days, and these are some of the folks that were in there at the time. And this was the mural that I painted of them. And the whole process was pretty cool, and it was one of the first murals that I did that kind of process, where I was hanging out in the community and talking about if they would feel comfortable being part of this wall, and then photographing them and putting them on this wall. And the bottom kind of has the scene of Homeless Lives Matter and how housing is truly a human right, and that we as a collective need to recognize that, and that we really all can't be living in equality if we can't provide people with basic housing. So yeah, this was really amazing. And this wall, the CCNB, is at D and 3rd, and it's 3 blocks away from the nation's Capitol building. So it's, DC, like I said, is going through massive gentrification, flooded with cash, yet cannot house people in affordable housing. It's a huge crisis right now, and it's completely unacceptable. This place still has 1,200 beds, and they're overpacked every single night. This is a piece that was a little bit more personal, a little bit more about personal healing through natural means. This is echinacea and arnica, kind of natural healing plants. And it's called Let Go. And so this figure, my friend, is releasing this bird and kind of letting go of things that you don't need anymore, and through a natural spiritual means. This is a pretty old piece that I did. Actually, that's Rosalind, who posed for me in the bottom right. And this was a piece that I did at a prison reentry center in Richmond. And it was a space, a temporary space for folks right out of incarceration to find resources for housing and for jobs and some training workshops and things like that. It's called Sanctuary. This was a really awesome piece that was also commissioned by the city, and it was about Duke Ellington, but right across the street there's a Duke Ellington portrait, and there's a Duke Ellington mural around the corner. So we were like, all right, I feel like Duke is awesome. Duke's from DC, but Duke didn't make his life and his legacy in Washington. So we actually made him on the wall. We really focused on other jazz musicians that kept the legacy in Washington and really built and continued the jazz scene there. And this, was very historically Black neighborhood, U Street, and kind of honoring places that weren't there anymore. So on Michelle Diego Cello, who's an awesome jazz musician, is Bohemian Caverns, which was a historic who are people that we're putting larger than life on this wall and why. So there's a method to the madness, and I think that it's important that we kind of center certain people and certain narratives that are really important, especially in preserving the history of something like the Shaw neighborhood, which is where this is in. This is a mural that I just finished 2 weeks ago, and it's on a new restaurant called Soup Up, and it was a really kind of amazing process. We worked with Donna, who started Soup Up, and this is a gentrifying neighborhood, so it's a very interesting bridging of a community of color and then new young white families that are moving in. And this is a new business owner who opened this place, and how we can kind of tell her story and bring people ultimately to her spot. So we put a call to the community and took some photos of people and created, this woman on the right owns the flower shop to the right of Donna. And her whole thing is about nourishing the community through good food. And if we can kind of take care of our bodies, we can take care of our communities. And so we were really all about that, high quality ingredients and stuff like that. So we brought that to life on the wall. And this is a mural I just finished, 2 days ago. Slightly different, but kind of a different aesthetic. And it's in a shopping center way out in Victoria, Maryland. But again, it's like, this was just a big blank wall, and it's nice that they decided this is a blank wall, and people are going to go by it. Let's do something here to activate this space. So I wanted something that's simple, kind of about community. Well, it's not really about community, it's more about connection through nature. And it's something that is bright and I think sort of non-binary. I feel like they can be any gender. Yeah, so I really liked that composition and was happy to make it really huge. So what's next, right? So I kind of wanted to quickly talk about how I'm moving forward as an artist and what we can kind of do, us here sitting in this room and beyond. I think addressing apathy and hopelessness is one of the biggest things, especially with young people. And I was reading a really good article. I really recommend Yes magazine. It's such an awesome magazine. Oh yeah. And they had a really great article about how to kind of tie in young people who continuously don't vote and feel like their voice doesn't matter and nothing that they do helps or does anything. And one of their biggest suggestions was a mentorship situation and really kind of creating a safe place where young people can go, where they can ask questions and they don't feel like they're going to be judged by that. And I think that that's really something that we need to do to continuously support young people and say your voice matters and it's okay if you don't know what you're doing, but nobody starts by knowing really what they're doing. Being intentional, I think I talked about that a lot. Everybody plays a part, and I think it's important, especially as white people, especially today, to really be intentional, especially with the power and privilege that we carry. I've been thinking so much about generational wealth, resource redistribution, and what we're doing as me, for example. I really try to, in my community, think about who I'm hiring for things. When I get opportunities, am I the best candidate, or maybe is somebody else the best candidate that might not have gotten that connection for certain reasons? So I think it's kind of about walking with intentionality in what we're doing. And I think that that's something that on an individual level, we can kind of chip away at white supremacy, really, which is killing everybody. So I think leaning into discomfort is really good, and I think at a very early age, I had mentors tell me that I'm going to totally mess up, and I'm going to be, told that I'm wrong or whatever, and to be open to critique, and to be open with totally messing up, and with the work of unlearning tons of things that you learn growing up in our society. And that's really work that has to be done, especially by really just listening. And then I think what we can do more than anything is vote, and I'm sure that you guys know that. In our class earlier today was a bunch of amazing young people, and they were all registered to vote. Those people that could be registered to vote were registered, and I think that's huge. And I think empowering young people to vote, and then also bringing it all the way to the end. How are you getting there? Do you have a ride? Let's all go together, creating carpools, making it super accessible. And I think that there's a way that you can, think that there's other ways that we can change the system, but what it really comes down to is that we need to put people in power that can change policy that reflect the reality of the people. And as a country, we're becoming more diverse, we're becoming more brown, we're becoming all of these really amazing things, and it's so critical that we put people in power that reflect the reality of the trajectory of the country. And we're at a crossroads. So people need to show up, and they need to organize, and they need to vote for people that will change things. On that note, I think that's it. Thanks. It's got one long rant. Thanks for letting me do that. Questions? I would love to hear from you, or why you showed up today, or how you feel like you fit into this, and what you're doing.
I have a question, not quite along those lines, but what's next, or what haven't you done that's really
That's a great question. I think that my trajectory is sort of twofold. I'm at heart an artist that wants to pursue her own personal work. I really sometimes want to just shut everything out and be in my studio for an undisclosed amount of time and work on my own practice. But the other side of that is that I feel like I really want to continue the community work that I'm doing. And I've come to a place working in DC that I have a recognized name and a little bit of a following, and being aware about what I'm doing with that today. So I think what's next is, I'm doing a small mural at the National Museum of Women in the Arts, which is very exciting. It's in their gift shop, but it kind of counts. And I'm doing some other fun projects coming up. And I feel I'm in a space that I have the power to do some things that I want. So I don't have a studio space anymore. I haven't found anything after the stew, which is sad. But I trust that I will find something, and that I'll continue to build and make connections. And for me, empowering and giving voice to all the young artists in DC that I feel like don't have that. So I think that it's sort of twofold. One is my own art practice and really digging into that, and the other is continuing to be an advocate for, folks that need it and want it.
I'm not an artist at all. I'm a historic archaeologist, and in my home, a lot of conversations about the Confederate statuaries and rumors and stuff. And to me, it always seems like opportunity for art. I just wondered if you had that opportunity, what would you do? How might you help?
Like around the Confederate statues?
Yeah, like how might you use art to help resolve
Yeah.
conflict?
Well, I think one thing that would be cool, and I've had some conversations about it, is, and one person brought up something that I thought was smart, and I think that if there could be something where we take all of those statues, and instead of just taking them away and destroying them, if we put them into some type of museum and really explained why did we have those statues? Why were we honoring those people in the first place? And not kind of shutting away that part of our history, but really looking critically at that part of our history and being like, we fucked up by having these statues here. We don't want to honor these people, and this is why, but having kind of a conversation about it. And even maybe like a plaque saying, there was something here that was this thing. We've come to a place in our society where we recognize that that's not reflective of our true history, and we need to have statues that reflect and honor different people. And I think if we had a space that was like for that, and we could explain that, and then, oh my God, I mean, the sky's the limit with replacing those with like totally awesome unsung heroes of the neighborhood, or totally amazing historical figures that have never been honored, Native American, Indigenous people. I mean, I feel like there's such awesome opportunity in those communities to talk about who's important to them and who do they want to honor. And I think that the government should fund those statues.
We've thought a lot about creating sort of a museum, but then I was wondering if maybe there was a way to actually interdigitate those existing sculptures with some of the stuff that you're talking to.
Yeah.
Create just a visual comment and not just text, right, that says, you know, yeah, what were you thinking? Why were you doing this?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the future, like it's 2018, I think we're coming to a place in our digital world. I know this other artist where with your phone, you can like hover over things and it will show you things. So I think if you could like hover over that and see what it was before or something like that. I mean, I just feel like we're thinking ahead to like technology. There's tons of things we can do with that.
Well, yeah, I had a similar kind of follow-up question, because for the longest time I took a very similar stance, that I've been very taken just in the last week with a statement made by one of the new MacArthur Fellows, Genius Grant, Titus Caffer, I think is his name, and he's calling for basically artist interventions of existing sculptures, similar to the AR hover over, but physically there, manipulating, changing, disrupting the sculpture as it stands rather than recontextualizing or reinterpreting, really inviting artists to say, no, do something with this. And I wonder, as an artist and as a socially activist artist, what you think about that?
I think it's, I mean, to me, I don't want to see those sculptures at all, but that's kind of personal. I love giving power to artists, and I think that especially what we need to do is giving power to artists of color and artists that have historically not, I mean, there's just so much white art, and I think that if we could have, but I love the idea of just giving power to artists to decide. I have no idea what I would do. I mean, I think that something where you like wrapped it, where like you couldn't really see it, but there was some type of, like maybe you could see through part of it or something, and there was like a full wrap around it, or like a hologram where you could see what it was before and what it, something like that. I mean, art is this amazing, unending, limitless thing where you could just totally, you could have a new artist every year do something and activate that space, And I think as a society, if we continue to invest in artists, in the artists, and in artist spaces, and in the infrastructure for them to survive and thrive, we can do so many cool things. Are there questions?
I'm curious, with your mural for the homeless shelter in DC, any actions were? I mean, you're so close to the Capitol, you had any?
I don't know.
Nothing.
I think I was inspired by being in that space, and I was talking with students today that it's such an interesting act to paint a mural in a community, because we were joking with this woman that I paint with that you don't even really stand outside of your own house for 8 hours a day for 7 days straight, you know what I mean? But like when you're painting a mural, you really get to know the community. I mean, you get to know the guys that hang out on the corner and the people that are at the bus stop and everybody that walks through that alley every single day. And especially if you're painting members of the community, it's such an awesome dialogue that you can have, and they really feel like they're engaged with you, or like they totally see the process and get into it. And that's such a sort of awesome, exciting thing that I feel feel like stays with that community after the mural is up, and they feel like they've kind of participated in that, which I think is really special. But no, nothing happened after that, which is sad. There were some articles. Street Sense is pretty cool. Homeless. It's written and produced by the homeless community, and there was a cool article about that. But other than that,
I wonder if that sense of empowerment of them seeing that you took the time to honor them, to put into your art piece, to put on this wall, but I think that's a huge piece for them. So it would be interesting to have that follow-up for you to go visit those people and see if that, has it affected their lives?
yeah,
And how?
yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I think one of the biggest things of feedback is so often people are like, I paint, or I'm an artist, or can I help you, or can I somehow get involved, or do you know of any art classes, or how do you even get into mural painting? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a ton of interest, and especially in something like the CCNB, it's like there's no art at all. You know what I mean? Let alone like a computer lab or a place for resources, And it's something that I think about to this day that I would really love to, and I still want to, and I still think that I will, create some type of programming there. Because there's just so many people that, also there's tons of shelters that, you have to leave at 9 o'clock in the morning, and you're not allowed back in. And just the structure of the shelters really perpetuates a lot of issues, and it's super problematic. So, spending time there, I saw it, and I think that there's so many things you can do, and even just providing art things, providing art supplies and materials, and for them to do whatever they want with, I think could be a really, really cool, powerful thing. You guys all registered to vote? Great.
Thank you, Rose.
Thank you so much.
If we didn't get the chance to go see the mural, I'm not sure what the light is like out there now, but we could go out and
Yeah.
see that, which would be great. And we can go right out these doors.
Yeah. And this is Susa.
It's got a little cold. Yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine, that's fine. This is Cheryl. Heather. Right here. How are you?
Suzanne.
What's his name?
It's like people, Suzanne. Thank you. This is amazing process. Just to be a small part. You had to do the same.